Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Toylist of Titles. My name is Justin Stevens. We're back with you for another offseason breakdown bonus episode. As you can see by the fact that I'm recording this from TIAA Bank Stadium at the pool right here at the stadium, this is the Jacksonville Jaguars breakdown. So we've almost gone through all of the AFC East at this point, and I had a nice interesting sit-down talk with a couple of the guys for the Tennessee Titans yesterday, so make sure you go back and check that out if you're a fan of the AFC South. But first off, George, man, it's been a minute. It's been like a week or two since we've been on a show together. So how's everything going? Life treating you right?
Man, I texted you earlier, told you how great today ended up being. I came home, my mother-in-law and my wife were both leaving, so it was just me and the dogs. There was fresh, hot, homemade cookies in the microwave. I got home earlier than I thought the show was, so I got a nice power nap in. Like, life is great. Today has been fantastic. It's not even Father's Day, but it's Father's Day weekend, so I can't wait to see what the weekend.
I love it. She kicked it off right with cookies. Hey, guys, we've got two amazing guests coming on today, and some of you recognize Zach. He's a very familiar face here recently on the T2T network. Some of you recognize Demetrius because this is like the third year in a row he's come on to do these breakdowns. We're going to get to that in just a second, but for now, watch this intro and be ready because we're here, Duuval. Here we go. All right. So the Jacksonville Jaguars, this is traditionally all about the offseason, right? But I do want to kind of sum up a little bit before we get started here. Our first question is going to be about how last season ended. But before I do all that, because y'all know I'm going to forget it at the end of the show, I want to make sure I introduce our guests, give them a chance to talk about their work a little bit, because I noticed things have changed on your Twitter handle a little bit. I don't see Big Cat Country anymore on your Twitter handle there, Demetrius. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, I've sort of upgraded, I guess, or, well, I don't know if you would say upgraded, but I got a new job, basically, with the Florida Times Union. Now I'm working there as a sports journalist. I cover the Jaguars. So basically doing the same things I did with Big Cat Country, just different platform, different company, a little bit more rules, I guess, things like that. But other than that, yeah, I've just been living the life, and you can find my content at jacksonville.com or on my Twitter feed. I tweet out all my stories. Jax.com spelled out is the Twitter handle for the Times Union Twitter account. So yeah, that's basically what I'm doing, where I'm at.
Outstanding. Appreciate your time. I know this is a busy time of the year for everyone in the NFL right now, because the NFL, we don't have an off season here. Just by our show alone. And speaking of not having an off season, we've got a guy that just started working with us here at the Toylist of Titles Network. He started his own Jacksonville Jaguars centric show here. This is my man Zach Allen of the Toylist of Titles Network of Duuvall Against Y'all. So I love the name, first of all, and you know,
appreciate.
If you know me at all, you know that I am a big Colts fan, but I've still been able to enjoy your content, man. So I really appreciate you coming on. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about the show you recorded earlier today and when that's going to drop?
Okay, yeah. So like he said, been doing this. I just recorded episode 4 earlier today. This episode is going to be a little more. We just did a rankings of the offensive players by position So of course you have Trevor the quarterback, and then we went down the list of all the way through. So that should be on this channel Monday at noon. So make sure to check that out. For all Jaguar stuff, and then next week I got special guests coming. So make sure to keep in 2 Mondays from now, sure to keep that in check. But yeah, that's what's basically I'm doing. I'm enjoying making this content. I'm gonna try to keep it going even more and more.
Love it, man. Absolutely love it. So again, appreciate you coming on the show. Appreciate all the work you're doing, and a bit with the network. And let me take you off of the solo here. Kind of forgot to do that. All right. So that first question, like I said, first question, and then I'll kick it over to George after that. We're going to start with you, Demetrius, and that is the way that the season ended last year. And I'm even going before the playoffs. I'm not saying it's a surprise that the Jaguars were able to take this division, but I am saying they didn't get a whole heck of a lot of respect, and from an outsider's view looking in, headed into the season compared to the way they performed. So tell me a little bit about how that season ended as a fan, Demetrius.
Yeah, from my perspective, just from covering the team, basically what happened was, they started obviously 2-6. They weren't able to get it going really in the beginning of the season because it's new team, new staff, new players, all that kind of stuff. Trevor Lawrence coming into his second year, really his rookie year, I would call it. And so that was sort of the bumps in the road, and they kind of got over the hump. They were losing games by just a couple points. And then they sort of capped off the season with 5 straight wins, which is sort of what no one would have anticipated. I don't think anybody surrounding the team anticipated, besides maybe internally, because, obviously the players and the coaches are going to think that they're going to go to the Super Bowl every year. But us as reporters or even the fans as a whole, they didn't think that the season would turn out the way it did. But, once that Lions game sort of woke them up, I would say, and that's when they sort of took off. And now they did go through teams that weren't, the best. Like the Titans, at that point, they were starting to go on that downward spiral. They obviously lost most of their last games. The Jets were a terrible team just because of the quarterback situation and everything surrounding that. The Texans, a bad team as well. And then the Titans again. So, they had a couple good wins. That Cowboys victory I thought was incredible. Obviously, the Rayshawn Jenkins walk-off touchdown, that was something to show you, not only from the offense's perspective, because Trevor Lawrence was able to sort of get it right because they were losing that game, and then they battled back, but also the defense was able to come through. That stayed the same way when they were going against the Titans the final week. Obviously Rayshawn Jenkins again comes in, gets a strip sack, and then Josh Allen, of course, takes in for a touchdown, which gave them that narrow, 20-16, I think it was, victory. So, at that point, that's when everything started to get good, basically, and they ended up going on their
playoff run. Yep, and a decent little playoff run at that. Zach, is there anything different for you that stands out about the end of last season?
I think the only thing that I would add to it would be I think the Jaguars showed that they can come back from everybody. We're coming back against Dallas and then Baltimore and even the Raiders games. So I feel like that shows that they had the capability that they could go farther than anyone's taking it forward. That it was more like they were just shooting themselves in the foot earlier in the game. That's fair.
George, you got a question for him?
Of course. I do kind of tend to agree with Demetrius that we're not even going to recognize the 2021 season for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is only erased from memory, but the NFL itself does not recognize that season for the Jaguars. So, yes, last year was definitely Trevor Lawrence's rookie year. Let's move from what happened last year to free agency and the draft. The Jacksonville Jaguars had 13 draft picks, 10 day 3 draft picks at that. What are some of the big key additions you guys got both in the draft and I'll throw it to you first, Zach. And what big free agent signings did the Jaguars make this offseason?
Okay, with free agency, we didn't go too deep into it. So our big free agency pickup was more in our trade deadline last year, and that was getting Calvin Ridley. So I feel like that was like our free agency. So we kind of just did more like depth and re-signed our own. is how they were saying it. So we re-signed Andrew Wingard and Jermichael Hasty, and so it was more like that. Then with the draft, I think the biggest one is obviously going to be our first round pick with Anton Harrison, and so looks like he's going to start at right guard or tackle, and then once we go into season, once Cam Robinson's suspension, depending on the length of it, will determine the rest of the offensive line. So I feel like that's the biggest two. We had a couple of surprise picks like Britton Strange early. We drafted him a little early, then a lot of people were rejecting him. So a lot of people were giving a little hate for that. But I feel like those two were probably going to be the biggest contributors for their rookie year, I think, would be Harrison and Strange.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, too, to kind of see that evolution because in the past, you've seen the Jaguars make a lot of moves, maybe not big name moves, but they make a lot of moves in the offseason with the free agency. They're losing guys a lot of the times, or they're going out to pick up needs here and there. But now they're at that point where they can re-sign their own and keep building on it. So I kind of like that. Was there any key players that he missed there, Demetrius?
Not that he missed. I mean, everyone's entitled to whatever they want to say, but I would just say, as far as their draft goes, it was sort of done in a way to help the depth of the team. I mean, this team didn't have a lot of glaring, blatant holes, and that's kind of a surprise to say because the Jags, enter every single season with a lot of holes, and they have to figure it out, and they have to go, heavy in free agency. But they didn't have to do that this year. They wanted to retain their own guys. Like Zach mentioned, they had to keep guys like Jermichael Hasty, like Andrew Wingard. They kept Adam Gotsis. They kept a couple more guys. Trey Herndon was another one. Obviously, Evan Ingram on the franchise tag. So they sort of solidified that group. And I would also agree, Calvin Ridley is sort of their free agent piece. They weren't able to use him, obviously, last year at the trade deadline. He got reinstated in March. So basically a free agent just coming to their team already, essentially on a 1-year contract. And then as far as the draft is concerned, I think Tank Bigsby probably is one of the most likely to have major contributions. Obviously, Anton Harrison is going to be the starting right tackle. I think that's sort of what Doug has told us, every time we talk to him, every time we ask him, Anton's playing right tackle, and there's not really much wiggle room for that. When Cam Robinson comes back, there's going to be different stuff, and we can dive into that later if you guys want. But, it's more so this offseason was about keeping the core together, sort of in if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality, because they were able to go on that run last year. They didn't have much cap space to spend in free agency, so they weren't going to go after big guys. And their plan so far, I mean, it seems like it might work, but that's sort of where we're at right now.
No, I mean, you can talk about Cam Robinson all you want. Like that's kind of why we have you guys on. We don't. Those of us that are in the Midwest that are rooting for other teams, we don't necessarily pay attention to all that. So Cam Robinson's suspension, my assumption from the outside looking in is Walker Little's going to move to left tackle for the time being, and then when he gets back from his suspension, they move. They got a decision to make.
Yeah, that's where a lot of it is like, what do you do?
Right. Yeah. So basically, from what I know and from what Doug has told us, Cam's making $18 million. He's going to play, this year at some point. And it's all about, when he comes back, what shape is he in? He's coming off of a knee injury too. It's not just the suspension. He had a knee injury last year, lost him the final, I think, 5 or so games of the season, including the playoffs. So, he's still battling back from that. But once he does come back, Walker Little potentially can slide into left guard. They've already been sort of cross-training him a little bit. That's sort of what you can do during the offseason program. You can, play around a little bit more than you can in training camp. You would assume that if they want their 5 best offensive linemen starting, you have Cam Robinson, go ahead and play that left tackle position, Walker Little at left guard, and then Anton Harrison at right tackle. I think that's what they would hope for in the ideal world. Obviously things can happen. If Tyler Shatley or whoever's starting at left guard is playing great, at that point you kind of just have to leave it alone. As long as everybody's playing well, I don't see why you would mix it up. But, it's going to be hard to keep a guy who's making $18 million this year. Obviously it'll be less because of the suspension, but who's making that much money, it's hard to keep him off the field. So.
And that's fair. And also, by the time he gets back from a suspension, it's the NFL. It's a grueling position. We don't know. Maybe somebody's going to get hurt and make that a whole lot easier decision. You never know. But I want to talk a little bit about the man that's helping to make this turnaround of the Jaguars happen, and that's Trevor Lawrence. Because as a Colts fan, as an AFC South fan, we have a lot to be excited about at that quarterback position from all four of the teams. We all now have a young quarterback of the future that could be exciting to watch to help turn the team around. And it was like with the Titans breakdown last night, I was telling the guys on that show that what I hated to see were all the injuries that the Titans have had the last couple of years, because you don't want to see your division foes lose that way. But at the same time, you also don't want to see your division foes just dominate. As a Colts fan, the Titans are probably my least favorite team, so I'm kind of rooting for you guys because I know we're in rebuild, right? So tell me a little bit about Trevor Lawrence, and what are you seeing in OTAs right now to see kind of a little bit of a jump maybe? Are we going to see an increase in what success we've already seen with this man? And I will start with Zach on this one, sir.
So yeah, from what I've seen with the OTAs and stuff, I've seen a lot of he's taken over. It seems like more because again, this would be his second year in an offense. He knows it more. He's able to, so it's more of relaxed second nature as opposed to last year. He's trying to figure out how to learn the offense and make sure everyone else is. So now he just can teach the younger guys. Looks like he's embracing more of a leadership role. And then with Calvin Ridley added, I feel like he's going to have another jump because now he has another guy who can be a number one receiver. Has proven he's number one with Christian Kirk. So I feel like that's going to open up the offense all that much more. And then with Tank, basically, like Demetrius said, it adds more running backs to the system. I feel like it's just going to be he's more comfortable than Ding.
Is Calvin Ridley the number one? Or is it Christian Kirk? That's really boggling my mind because Kirk had such a great season.
That's what I was he can be another number one. He's proven
he can.
That's what I was like. So we got two guys who could probably compete it as well. So.
What? But do you know if you've seen anything in camps right now that would suggest one or the other, or are they split in time?
It's kind of strange. So camp training or off-season program, you can't tell anything. I mean, I write stuff and I'll say observations, whatever. Those are kind of moot. You don't really gain much out of anything because Calvin right now he's sort of still reacclimating himself to the offense. First of all, he has to learn the offense. He's reacclimating himself to football in general. Remember, this guy hasn't played football in 1.5 years. So he hasn't done too much work. He hasn't gone full speed. They don't go full speed during these off-season programs. So to say that he's a number one, it sounds a little premature, but at the same time, if you look at his body of work, he's a dominant wide receiver. He has way more tools than Christian Kirk does. And that's not a slight at Kirk. It's simply how those two play their games. Christian is really, really good in the slot, probably one of the better slot receivers in the entire league. He has an amazing sense of spatial awareness where he'll get out into a zone and he'll know exactly where to stop. And then they have the chemistry, him and Trevor, together. So, it's saying there's a number one. Calvin will probably get you those, big chunk yards more. He'll be the go-to guy a lot more often, in my opinion, as long as he's playing to his potential. But right now there's not any settled thing. Either way, though, I mean, they're both gonna be on the field at the same time. Both are starters. One's playing outside, one's gonna play inside. It's not gonna make much of a difference in terms of how you phrase it.
Fair enough.
So, a couple of guys that we've mentioned already in the show is Tank Bigsby, and we mentioned about the Jaguars bringing back Jermichael Hasty. We haven't really talked much about Travis Etienne. What can we expect from that running back with those three guys? Hasty, I believe he had his the best year of his career last year, and then the Jaguars go out, they re-sign him, but then they go out and invest a day 2 pick in another running back. What can we expect from that running back room?
Who would you like to answer, me or?
Go for it. Don't matter.
Yeah, let's take this one.
All right, I'll just in terms of their running back room. I mean, Tank obviously is coming in as a rookie. It's going to be tough for him to get going right away. But at the same time, he's very talented. I mean, the guy looks fantastic at all the camps I've been to, he's looked great. I mean, he looks like a guy who could be the number 2 back essentially. I would say it's hard to say that he would take snaps necessarily over Travis right away, but deep into the season, I could definitely see it. Travis was great last year, 1,400 all-purpose yards, plenty of touchdowns. He did a great job. I think that this year he's going to, do even better because he's going to have that awareness of the offense. He's going to have the vision. He already has the speed, has the elusiveness, all of that stuff that you need in a top-end running back. So, right now I just think that he's the number 1 guy. Adding Tank Bigsby was important in the sense of they didn't really have a true number 2 last year. Hasty was solid, but he's not a guy who's going to ground and pound it. He's going to go in on third down, catch a couple passes, rip off a 40 or 50 yard carry, but he's not a guy who you can rely on, in my opinion, for like 15 carries a game. If Travis had gone down, it would have been interesting to see what they would have done, for example. So, they had to add him. They added Dearness Johnson in free agency. That was probably I guess if you want to count only the free agents, that was probably their most exciting free agent, just because he's a running back. He had some good success with the Browns a couple years ago. So yeah, that their running back room is sort of in flux, but at the same time, if I had to call it today, it would be Etienne number 1, and then Tank Bigsby number 2/1B later. JaMychal Hasty still has the 3rd running back, and then 4th running back probably Dearness Johnson. I would say Snoop Conner is probably the odd man out, just because Johnson offers so much with the special teams. Snoop just didn't do any special teams last year. Kind of struggled a little bit as a rookie from the actual running back position. So that right now it seems like it's in good shape. It's just a matter of getting them on the field, right?
So, I mean, and his name is Tank, so you got to draft the guy, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a tank on the team. So, according to Pro Football Reference, that defense last year was ranked 12th overall last season in just overall defense. So, that was obviously good enough to win the AFC South. They say defense wins football games, and the way that they've set up the NFL for offensive powerhouses to be able to do pretty much whatever they want. Defense is extremely important. So, Zach, we'll start with you this time. What do they do on the defensive side that's going to help improve? Because I feel like they need to at least be in that top 10 range. So maybe not. They may not need a huge jump in defense, but there's obviously some kind of improvement that needs to be done somewhere. Did they make that happen, Zach?
So I feel like a lot of for their defense is more of they're counting on their future growth. So like we lost Arden Key to the Titans, and DeWan Smoot still hasn't been re-signed, and he's coming off his Achilles injury. So our pass rush is they're kind of counting on Josh Allen, and then our number 1 overall pick last year, Trayvon Walker, to kind of step up and be those guys. We did draft a few guys later in the draft. I mean, most later draft picks don't really play as much early. So I feel like they didn't do as much, but it's more of our potential. Like we have like Devin Lloyd and Chad Muma are 2 linebackers trying to step up next year. So I feel like it's more of like to have these guys get better this year, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I mean that's 8 defensive players that they drafted in rounds 4 on. Like 1 or 2 of them are bound to hit, right? So, and they should know that pretty early if they at least have the talent and the speed to keep up. So they'll at least make the team and have the opportunity. So I certainly like that answer. So one of the things we did a short on the biggest question marks for the Jaguars heading into the season, and that defensive line was actually one of the biggest question marks that we had considered. Josh Allen, it seemed like Josh Allen kind of took a step back. Now, when I was watching it, I felt like it was a lot of double teaming. I think that was a whole lot of his step back was more so the double teaming, but I think that it's because they didn't really feel threatened on the rest of that defensive line. Has anything changed on that defensive line, Demetrius?
No, it really hasn't. And I think I'll echo what Zach said. They're sort of depending on the second year growth from guys like Trayvon. Obviously, your number 1 overall pick, you want to get a little bit more out of him from the pass rush department. Great disruptor. He did a really good job in that area. The run defense was solid. The reason why they were doubling Josh is because, he's a lot more experienced, especially in the pass rush department. They didn't have to double Trayvon as much, but, at times Trayvon did, demand those double teams, especially later in the season after he came back from his injury. So, it was sort of a mixed bag last year. Foley Fatukasi got hurt early and didn't ever really recover from that, in my opinion. I think it was a calf injury against the Eagles. So, it was just a situation where that defensive front just wasn't experienced enough. It didn't have enough talent. They lost Arden Key. That was a big, he played a big role. Yeah, he only had 4.5 sacks, I believe, maybe 4 sacks total, but he had the second most pressures on the team. He was a guy that was a contributor inside and out, and they didn't really replace him. They think that Yasir Abdullah, who was taken in the 5th round, can sort of replace some of those reps, especially in the pass rush department. But I mean, to me, he's not a guy that you go ahead and move inside. So I don't think that he's going to be able to replace him completely. But yeah, the defensive line is something that, everybody has talked about. We've asked about. We've said, are you guys going to add a free agent defensive lineman or a pass rusher? They've continued to say they're always going to look. There was some speculation that they would add it before training camp and everything, but they wanted to sort of see what they got before they went that route. So yeah, it's not going to be there's not some new blood coming in. It's more about, do you get improvement from Josh Allen, who, while he did have a down year, it was sort of that late surge that you saw what he could do. I felt like Roy Robertson-Harris played better down the stretch, so that enabled Josh to play a little bit better. So they're just expecting all these guys to sort of grow, and I think that's a reasonable expectation. If you're a coach, that's your job, right? You're supposed to develop these guys. You don't draft and then assume that it's just all going to take care of itself. You have to actually put forth the effort. So, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a little bit better just based off of development. But, it's definitely a concern.
And then to see Arden Key go to the Titans makes it hurt even a little bit worse. But great job on the name pronunciation there for Fatukasi. I never get it right.
I've had to say it a few times. So
yeah. All right, George. Sorry about that.
No, dude, you're fine. Jacksonville brought in a new coach for their defense this year. His first year, Mike Caldwell. He's been around the league for like 13, 14 years, something like that. I know that he was over with Tampa. What are the Jaguars expecting him to be able to do different with that defense than versus what the coach that was there last year was able to do?
It was the same coach last year. So Mike was hired with Doug. So he's been here and well, I will say this though about Mike. I think that last year with his first time being the defensive coordinator, you sort of saw those lumps, especially early. I mean, the guy comes in, he doesn't really have too much experience in terms of coordinating a defense, calling the plays, things like that. So entering his second year, you're expecting sort of a boost. He understands it, he's taught it, he knows what works, what doesn't with this personnel. So you're sort of expecting some growth in that area too.
All right. What can you tell me about Andre Cisco? Because I was listening to some podcasts earlier to get a little bit more familiar with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and his name was brought up multiple different times on various different podcasts. So what can we expect from Andre Cisco? Is he like going to become like a household name or expected to, or were these guys just hyping him up?
You can take that, Zach, if you want to.
All right. So I think Cisco should be going up. I mean, he had a couple flashes last year. I mean, he still has a little bit of tackling issues, but in space, I feel like he's a pretty decent cover safety. I mean, the only game I really remember him struggling was against Kansas City, and that was because he was on Kelsey, which, I mean, everyone has issues with Kelsey. So I think he's going to be good. Like I said, his tackling can get a little iffy on times, but he's more of our cover safety. I was like, we keep Jenkins near the line of scrimmage more between the two. He's had but Cisco, I feel it should be. I mean, he's one of the fastest guys in the league, so I feel like he should be having a better, become a household name after this year. I'm saying I think he could get 4 or 5 receptions. Don't give me a number idea.
Very good. Very good. My next question has to do with the schedule coming up and kind of your predictions. So we've kind of talked about and exhausted the off-season stuff a little bit. Let's try to look ahead. Let's look forward to 2023 here. And when I look at this schedule, you guys start out the gate in those first 6 games. You do have the Chiefs and the Bills in there. So obviously those are going to be tough games. Those are going to be games where you're going to be able to see what you have. But then you also have games against the Falcons, the Texans, and 2 against my rebuilding Colts. So pretty easily 4 wins right there. Obviously the Colts and the Texans could be, you never know with them being divisional opponents or whatever. But, I mean, let's face it, we're not at the same level yet. So so if they can break through and they can get a win against either one of those Chiefs or Bills, you're starting off 5-1. That's a lot of good momentum headed into the rest of the season, and there's a lot of other winnable games in the season as well. What would you say is your prediction here? If there is a win-loss prediction, and if there's not a win-loss prediction, at least a prediction on how you see the season going. We'll start with you, Demetrius, on this one.
Yeah, I've already actually done my schedule prediction. You know, everybody does it right after the schedules come out. I predicted 12-5, and I think it's reasonable. So they play the AFC South. Like you said, it's a rebuilding division. You know, all 3 teams, other than the Jaguars, drafted a quarterback. You know, they're especially the Colts and the Texans. So, you know, those 3 teams are going to struggle a little bit out of the gate. I feel like, you know, during the season probably struggle too. I think the Titans are still on that downswing before they rise back up. I think that they have to figure out life without Derrick Henry very soon, probably even this year. So, you know, that division, playing 6 games within it, I feel like they have a chance to either sweep or you know, go 5-1, 4-2, something like that. They also play the NFC South, which is another very struggling division. You know, there's debates if the AFC South or the NFC South is the worst in the league. I think right now I would say the AFC South, only because of the quarterbacks, kind of, but at the same time, it's really a toss-up. You know, the NFC South still has their own struggles. So they played those games. Those are 4, you know, winnable games for them. And then they have, you know, a couple of solid teams that they're going to play. You know, teams like the Steelers are still solid. You know, obviously you have the Ravens later in the season. You have the Bengals, you have the Browns. So, you know, that sort of is going to be where they're tested most. That's where they're going to actually have to figure out, you know, what kind of team they are. In my opinion, those games against the Bills and the Chiefs, I could easily see them losing. Wouldn't really blame them for losing them, and it would make sense. So, really the games that they're going to have to keep an eye on or key in on is that AFC North, which is the Bengals, the Browns, the Ravens, and the Steelers. So, but yeah, 12-5, I have them losing just 5 games. I think that's perfectly reasonable, at least as the teams are right now. Their injuries happen, things happen, so you never know.
Zach?
What's funny is I feel close. I have it going 13-4. Because I mean, pretty much everything you said, but I feel like there's going to be one game that we shouldn't win. That I feel like the Jaguars will end up winning. Like, will it be like the Bills game, or just off example? I feel like there's going to be a game that's going to surprise everybody. So that's why I feel like it's going to be 13-4. But everything else I agree with. I mean, injuries could affect everything. I know a lot of people are like the Chiefs, or like we might have like a revenge game against the Chiefs even. So I just feel that's going to be the schedule. I mean, like you said, it's going to be harder playing them later in the year. Some of the teams like Baltimore late trying to make playoff runs, I think will always be a hard game. I mean, we always have it seems like, other than that one year and on London, I feel like we always play the Ravens tough. So I feel like that's going to be a close game. But yeah, I feel like you said, I think we're all about the same.
That's fair. I have
less than 11. I feel like disappointing.
I've got them at 11-6, and the only reason why is I homer pick here. I did choose the Colts to beat them in Week 6, but only for one reason and one reason alone. I feel like that running game, by the time AR comes around to Week 6, along with JT and the fact that the defensive line probably is the biggest question mark right now. So I feel like by then, judging by the fact that back when the Colts were good, no matter how good they were or how bad the Jaguars were still this huge thorn in the ass of the Colts every single time we played. We lost to the Jaguars so many times when we should have won. I'm kind of hoping that there's a little bit of payback here. So so we have a good Jaguars team now, and maybe we can be that thorn for once. But I'm right there.
The same thing, actually. I have the Colts beating the Jags in Week 6. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right on. So we must have been different somewhere else. But hey, George, do you have a final question for the guys, or at least another question?
Yeah, I do. This one's gonna be kind of fun. If you could take any player in the NFL and put them on the Jag. Actually, let's do two. Any two players in the NFL and put them on the Jaguar. What two players would it be? And
what two players and why? He kind of cut out there.
Okay, I was gonna say. All right. Okay. So I'll take the first one. So first one, I'll take Sauce Gardner as a corner. I feel like one of our issue with corner is a slot corner, so that will help us with our nickel corner. So I felt that takes that away. So that makes our defense that much better. And then if we're going, if you give me one, you said two, so if you give me one more, give me Chauncey Gardner. Or anyway, see that's where give me Melvin Ingram. I feel like that's one of our things that we need. I mean, he's a free agent, so we can still sign him. I've talked about it. I actually talked about that. I think it was the first episode of Duuuval Against Y'all. So because he's still available, so we can still sign him. But I feel like we need like a veteran presence on our D line, and so I feel like that he will help that a lot. I feel like he's a guy every year he gets signed later in the season. He's still putting up decent numbers, so I feel like he's the guy that would help us and help Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker and. As you can go push Trayvon Walker in the inside on pass rushing down. So we have Melvin coming in. So those would be the two I think would be.
And if he wants a shot at a ring, like you got to think that Jacksonville is on the short list, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's sort of the thing that they're going to have to weigh too. You know, when they want to go out, if they want to go out and sign a pass rusher, they're not going to want to give anybody too much money over multiple years. That's just a non-starter for them. So a guy like Jan is probably out. And they're also not going to want to give anybody a starting job. They have Trayvon, they have Josh Allen. There's not really a spot in their minds, whether or not people agree with that or not. But for me, I would say the two guys. I mean, Myles Garrett and Sauce Gardner is a good one, but I'll differ and say Patrick Surtain. Basically the same type of players. Obviously, Myles Garrett, fantastic player. I mean, best pass rusher in the league when he's playing to his level he can play at. And then Patrick Surtain is incredible. Besides Sauce Gardner, two of the top young guys in the NFL. I thought that even a guy like Jalen Ramsey could have came back to the Jaguars, but that was probably never going to happen. So yeah, those two players, I think that they really need a pass rusher. They need a corner. Offensively, it's crazy, but I don't think that they really need too much of anything. They just have to have their players play to their potential. They have to have the offensive line stay healthy. Calvin Ridley actually be Calvin Ridley, and then Trevor is Trevor. He's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And Sauce Gardner has that charisma too. Like he fits in well in the New York environment, but he would also fit in really smoothly with Jacksonville and that laid back. Like aside from the man with the jorts that's now playing back up for my team, I mean he's just got that kind of charisma, right? So. All right, I think my questions are pretty much done. Did you have any more questions for him, George?
Just one more. All
right.
Where are the Jaguars going to play while their new stadium is getting built? If the new stadium does get built.
Yeah, that's a huge topic. Right now,
London.
So it's not done. It's not finalized. That's going to be a little while. They're still going to negotiate with the city. The new mayor still has to be established. The mayor-elect Donna Deegan hasn't officially taken office. She'll take office July 1st. That's when they're going to really start hammering home what it's going to look like, what they're going to do, if they're even going to have the stadium. If they don't have the stadium, they will probably move. But in my opinion, they're going to have the stadium, and where they're going to play, there's a few options. It's kind of complicated. So they can go to Gainesville, play their games at the Florida Field, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. That is a pretty favorable option. They can go to Daytona, which would be crazy. The Daytona Speedway, that's been a floated option. It would take a lot of money to upgrade all that. And, that's something that they have to look at. They can go to Orlando, Camping World, or maybe the other stadium. I'm not sure. That's an option, but, I think a lot of fans hate that option because they're going to have to travel a lot. Me as a journalist, I'll probably want to fly, honestly, to go to Orlando rather than drive.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do that. So London is, in my opinion, that is not really an option, but they could play more games in London during that time span. They're playing 2 this year, 1 home, 1 away, technically. And they could do something like that as well to sort of mitigate how often they have to play at another stadium. But, those are the places that they're looking at. And then there's an option to play in Jacksonville too. So, UNF, the college in Jacksonville there, they might be able to renovate that and play in that situation. They might be able to renovate the baseball field where the Suns or not the Suns, the Jumbo Shrimp play. So, that's an option, but really it's going to be tough because they're going to have to add, that's going to add at least, several $1 million, a lot of $1 million, basically maybe 150 in order to get those things up to code. So yeah, right now it's all up in the air. There's no one knows the answer completely. But yeah, that's sort of what their options are at this moment.
There's a team called the Jumbo Shrimps.
Yeah, it's a AAA affiliate, I think, or
Dude, that team sounds delicious.
Minor league. Yeah, no, it's fun. I feel like minor league baseball is like, if you're into baseball at all, it's a great time just because of the atmosphere and everything. They make it fun. So
I love it. All right, guys. So I'm going to wrap this up. For us, you can check us out, toilisttitles.com. You can check us out on any platform. Just type in Toilets of Titles. You'll be shocked. There was nobody else that has that name. You're going to find us. But this episode's dropping on Monday, so make sure you check us out tomorrow night on the flagship show, where we're going to drop another little secret about this year's Frankenstein League. We're adjusting one of the monster cards that you can play against your opponent. So it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be another fun, crazy show. But also, we're doing a Scott Fishbowl mock draft on Tuesday night. Demetrius, appreciate your time. We appreciate you coming on. Florida Times Union. And I had the other information up here, right here, his Twitter handle down at the bottom, at Demetrius82. Check him out over at jax.com. That's spelled out JAXDOTCOM. Check out his work. Make sure you subscribe and follow to him and show him some love. And then, of course, Zach, man, appreciate you coming on. It's been great to finally get to do a show with you at blind_side_73, the host of Duuval Against Y'all. I hope we were able to do Duuval justice and do Duuval right. I know that's a very tight-knit group up there, a very fun fan base. And hopefully I'll be able to get a drink bought from one of these guys here at the pool while after we close out here. But appreciate your time. Y'all have a Duuval day.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man.
What's up, Title Tribe? We appreciate you watching the show. If you want to catch up on all of our college football content, make sure you subscribe to the CFB Nation by clicking their link below. Make sure you subscribe to the Toilets Titles Podcast Network by clicking our link below. And make sure to catch our other content by watching these videos to the side of me.